Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Autumn and today I want to talk about 12 books I want to read in 2025. In 2024, I had a 24 in 24 goal. These are all of the books I wanted to read in 2024 that were on that list. These are all of the books that I actually read as of December 23rd. And I'll be totally honest, I don't see myself reading any more books that are on this list. When I was making my TBR, thinking about fun ways to come up with a list for 2025, typically we do 25 in 25, like how I did last year, 24 and 24, but because I only read about half of the books on my 24 and 24 list, it really made me stop and think about what I can and can't do. Every year I have a goal to read 50 books. 50 books is my goal. I'm a relatively slow reader. Putting myself into a box where 25 of those 50 books have to be part of my yearly TBR, or, you know, the priority books that I want to read in 2025, it didn't seem realistic for me. What I decided to do is just say, you know what, let's just have 12 books that I want to read in 2025 and talk about those books. So that's what I'm going to be doing for 2025 for this new year. Let's see if I'll be able to accomplish those goals. With that being said, I do have 3 honorable mention books that I can interchange with those 12 set books, but I could read these 3 other books that I'll mention, and those will be part of the 12 in 2025. But the first honorable mention is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Enter the players. There were 7 of them, 7 bright young things with wide precious futures ahead of them. Until that year, we saw no farther than the books in front of their faces. On one day when Oliver Marks is released from jail, the man who put him behind bars was waiting for him, which was the detective that was on the case. He wants to know the truth of what happened a decade before, where Oliver was one of the 7 young Shakespearean actors at a classic conservatory, a place that was keen on ambition and fierce competition. In a secluded world of firelight and leather-bound books, Oliver and his friends played the same roles on stage and off: the hero, the villain, the tyrant, the temptress, the ingenue, and the extra. But in their 4th and final year, good-natured rivals turn ugly, and on opening night, real violence invades the students' worlds of make-believe. In the morning, the 4th years find themselves facing their very own tragedy and their greatest acting challenge yet, convincing the police, each other, and themselves that they are innocent. Very excited for this one. I've heard great things about it. The next honorable mention that still has the Target sticker on it, I didn't take it off, but it is I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast Is Me by Jameson Shea. This one is a ballerina horror that I'm super excited about. I did end up reading a ballerina horror. It was more of like a psychological thriller in 2024, and it was okay. We won't go down that road, but I think this ballerina story is exactly what I'm looking for and what I wanted out of the other book. So this book follows our main character, Laurie. I'm not exactly sure if that's how you pronounce it, but she has always danced in a cutthroat world of ballet at a disadvantage. Tired of being overlooked, she ventures deep into the Paris catacombs, where she finds a pulsing blood river that offers her anything she's ever dreamed about and worked towards: power and awe. With it, she takes her place above her peers, but soon she cannot distinguish her own lust for more. With the primordial presence in her veins, Laurie quickly learns that she's not the only monster around, and her vicious desires put a target on her back. As she descends into godhood and the mystifying underworld below, she is faced with the ultimate choice: continue to break herself for a world that doesn't love her back, or succumb to the darkness that wants her exactly as she is. Monstrous heart and all. That is, if the god killer doesn't catch her first. This sounds so good, and I hope to read it in 2025. The final honorable mention before we get to the meat and potatoes of this video is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Dower. I have read All of the Light We Cannot See by the same author. Absolutely loved it. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. In the 15th century, an orphan named Anna lives inside the walls of Constantinople. She learns to read, and in this ancient city, famous for its libraries, she finds what might be the last copy of the centuries-old book, the story of Aethon, who longs to be turned into a bird so that he can fly to the utopian paradise in the sky. Outside of the walls is Omir, a village boy conscripted with his beloved oxen into the army that will lay siege to the city. His path and Anna's will cross. In the present day, in the library in Idaho, Zeno rehearses children in a play adaptation of Aethon's story, preserved against all odds through centuries. Tucked beyond the library shelves is a bomb planted by a troubled, idealistic teenager, Seymour. This is another siege. And in the not so distant future, on an interstellar ship, Argos, Constance is alone in a vault, copying on scraps of sacking the story of Aethon told by her father. It definitely sounds like there's a lot going on in this story. It sounds like we get some past, we get present, and we get some futuristic type situations. I am very excited for this one. And now to move on to the 12 books that I hope to get to in 2025. The first book up is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I have read a few books by this author and have loved all of them. I've heard mixed things about The Familiar by the same author, but I hope I will enjoy it. So it says, fate can be changed, curses can be broken. The next book up that I am super excited about is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I got it for my birthday and I'm very excited. I am on hold for the audiobook through the Libby app, so hopefully it'll come through relatively soon into 2025. This book takes place in this apartment in present day, but there's also a time loop thing where there's also a man, I believe, that had lived in this apartment 7 years before, and our main character is currently living in this apartment. I believe it was her aunt's after her aunt passed away, but when she moves into her late aunt's apartment and finds a strange man standing in the kitchen, a man with kind eyes, a southern drawl, and a taste for lemon pies, her well-laid plans for life begin to fall apart because he's the kind of man who, before it all, she would have fallen head over heels for, and she still might. Except he exists in the past, 7 years in the past to be exact, and she quite literally lives 7 years in his future. Her aunt always says that the apartment was a pinch in time, a place where moments blended like watercolors. She also said that love is never a matter of time, but a matter of timing, and Clementine fears she may be 7 years too late. This sounds incredibly wholesome, very maybe quite sad, but I think it'll be a good time. The next book up, we are coming in with a different genre, which is The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. I love this author. I've only read one other book by her, but this book sounded so intriguing. This was also another birthday gift, but this book follows a married couple. The husband has an affair, and I believe the mistress ends up dead, and the wife is a lawyer, and she has to represent her husband to prove his innocence. And this sounds so incredibly good. The next book up that I actually got off of Pango is The Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Bowley. I know that there is a murder plot line, and this girl was going off to college, but back in her hometown something happened, and I believe her brother was, I think there was something that had to do with her brother. And now as the deceptions and deaths are growing, our main character must learn what it means to be a strong, I'm gonna butcher it, but I'm gonna do my best, Ojibwe woman. That's not correct, but I know I've said it correct in the past. And how far she'll go for her community, even if it means tearing apart the only world she's ever known. Sounds absolutely epic. This might be one I read in like more of the springtime. This feels like more of like a spring summery type read. The next book up is a book that was on my list of 24 and 24 that I didn't end up reading, but I really wanted to. You guys have no idea how much I've been wanting to read this book. We'll just go ahead and say what it is. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I could have read this book without the audiobook. Absolutely. I recognize that completely, but I really wanted to listen to the audiobook while I was reading this book. I have been waiting for the audiobook through Libby for months, for several months. I am down to like 6 weeks left to waiting for this book, so it's gonna have to be a book I read in 2025. It says reclusive Hollywood icon Evelyn Hugo is finally ready to tell the truth about her glamorous and scandalous life. But when she chooses unknown magazine reporter Monique Grant to write her story, no one is more astounded than Monique herself. Determined to use this opportunity to jumpstart her career, Monique listens in fascination. From making her way to Los Angeles in the 1950s to leaving show business in the 80s, and of course the 7 husbands along the way, Evelyn unspools a tale of ruthless ambition, unexpected friendship, and a great forbidden love. But as Evelyn's story nears its conclusion, it becomes clear that her life intersects with Monique's own in tragic and irreversible ways. I've read another book by the same author. I really enjoyed it. It was Daisy Jones and the Six, on the list again for another year. And next up we have Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Very excited for this one. I really wanted to read this book in 2024, but I just ran out of time. But this one says, "He is trying to poison me. You must come for me, Naomi. You have to save me." I have a couple of friends that have read this book and they think that I would really enjoy it, and I could not agree more with them. So hopefully I can read this book soon. The next one up will be a book I read in 2025, but I think this will be one I read a little bit later into the year. It feels like a book that needs to be read maybe at the end of the summer or kind of early fall time, but it is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I have yet to read a book by this author, but I have hopes that this is going to be my year of Brandon Sanderson. This book follows our main character, Tress. So it says, "The only life Tress has ever known on her island home is in an emerald green ocean has been a simple one, with the simple pleasures of collecting cups brought by sailors from faraway lands and listening to stories told by her friend Charlie. But when his father takes him on a voyage to find a bride and disaster strikes, Tress must stow away on a ship and seek the sorceress of the deadly midnight sea. Amid the spore oceans where pirates abound, can Tress leave her simple life behind and make her own place, sailing a sea where a single drop of water can mean instant death." This sounds great. It sounds like a fantastic, cute, fun time, and it does say that it'll appeal for fans of The Princess Bride, which is one of my all-time favorites. We're nearing the end. I can see we've got like 4 more books. But the next one up is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I have read one book by this author, Beach Read. Absolutely loved it. Thought it was a really fun, cute time, and I hope to read this book as like a nice little fun palette cleanser at some point this year. That's what I really loved about Beach Read, is it just felt like a nice, fun palette cleanser in between reading dark horror books and reading pretty dense fantasy books. So I'm excited for this one. It says, "One summer, 2 rivals, and a plot twist they didn't see coming." I've got 3 more, and 2 books on this list are pretty darn chunky, which is why I haven't started reading this book. I know I'm going to love it. I truly do know I am going to love this book, but I am terrified of it just because of how dense it is. It's almost 1,000 pages. It is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Pelani. I've been really wanting to read this book for several months now, and in fact I had sat down to read this book and I saw that it was small print and over 800 pages, and I honestly just noped out of there. I couldn't at the time, and I want to read this book at some point this year, but I am in the middle of another pretty big fantasy series, and I think I want to finish that series before I dive into this one. But thankfully this book is a standalone. I know that there is a smaller prequel, which I do plan on reading that one also, but it does say Kira Navarez dreamed of life on new worlds. Now she's awakened to a nightmare. This book does sound incredibly amazing and brilliant, and it gives me a little bit of vibes, and I have no idea if this is correct, but it gives me a little bit of the vibes of How High We Go in the Dark. I have no idea if my assumption is correct. This does give me vibes of this, although this book is a lot chunkier than this book. So the second to the last one is a book I did want to read this year, but I ended up not reading it because the other book that I had read from this author I didn't quite enjoy, and I did end up DNFing it, so I wanted to give myself a break before I went back to this author. But it is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This book is told by 3 different perspectives, and I know one of the perspectives is a cat. I really want to read this book, and I wanted to give it a fair shot. The last book on this list is also a pretty chunky boy. I have a few chunky books on this list. I also have some series that I wanted to finish too this year. I did make a separate video for that one, so I'll leave it linked down below if you're curious about 5 series that I want to complete complete in 2025. This book is not part of a series, but he is a chunky boy, and it is Babel by R.F. Kuang. Have never read a book by this author. Have heard wonderful, beautiful things about this book. It is chunky, which is why I've been a little terrified of investing so much time into reading a pretty big book. And I think that's mostly my problem, is I tend to stick to more smaller books and like quicker books to read. I just really want to be part of the fun. It is a historical fantasy epic that grapples with student revelations, colonial resistance, and the use of language and translation as a dominating tool of the British Empire. It sounds absolutely amazing. I would love to read this book in 2025.
Me too.
Well, maybe we can read it together. So those are the 12 books and the 3 honorable mentions that I want to read in 2025. Let me know if I put any new books on your radar. If you have any of these books on your TBR for 2025, let me know all of that down in the comments below. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. My name is Autumn, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.